طيب الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى لا سيما النبي المجتبى الأمين المصطفى وعلى صحابته الكرام وآل بيته العظام المستكملين الشرف أما بعد. After praising Allah Azza wa Jal and sending praise and salutations upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his household, his companions, we continue our study of Fiqh Seerah. Today we're talking about the public and open da'wah, which we finished off talking about said topic last week. However, we encountered some technical issues. A very quick summary of that, which we talked about last week, which was the public da'wah. We talked about the story of the ascending of the Prophet ﷺ and Mount As-Safa, and the call that he gave out to the people. And we said this happened at the descending of the verses such as وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and warn those who are close to you from your kindred, from your tribesmen, etc. Warn those close to you. Likewise, يَا أَيُّهَا الْمُدَّثِّرْ قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ. O you who is covered, قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ. And verses other than that, فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Go forth with that which you have been ordered, and turn away from the mushrikeen. And so we mentioned some of these verses, and likewise we mentioned the specific call that was made when the Prophet ﷺ ascended the mount. We talked about his saying sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ishtaru anfusakum. The Prophet ﷺ literally said to his people, "O people, ransom yourselves, purchase yourselves." And we said that when he used the word here, ishtaru, which literally means to buy, to purchase, to trade. And we said this is as if he's saying to the people that trade your obedience and your submission to Allah Azza wa Jal for what in return? For your success, for your salvation in return. And this coincides with the saying of Allah Azza wa Jal in many places in the Quran. For example, saying of Allah Azza wa Jal, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنفَقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً يرجون تجارة لن تبور. Allah Azza wa Jal calls in more than one place in the Quran. He calls this the fact that a person, his salvation is gained by his submission and his Islam. He calls it tijara. He calls it business, trade. تجارة لن تبور, a business which is always successful. يا أيها الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم. Oh, you who believe, should I not point you towards a business, a trade which will save you, which will give you success from a painful punishment, and other verses are mentioned in regard to this. Fine. And likewise we mentioned the fact that the Prophet would call out specific tribes, even to the end where he called out his own daughter specifically. Fine. And other than this, and the detail is in the last lesson. Is everyone with me up to here? Is anyone unaware of the issue of what we mean by the public da'wah, the open call, the open propagation? Is everyone with me? طيب ممتاز. Excellent. It's very important to understand here, and we're going to reiterate this point inshallah this week and next week, that when we say open propagation to Islam, when we say open propagation, open call, open da'wah, some people get confused here, we don't necessarily mean here that now everyone's Islam became public. What we mean is the da'wah itself, i.e. the call of the Prophet ﷺ has become public, because it was, prior to this, it was secretive, it was private, it was one-on-one. The call has now become where the Prophet ﷺ is looking for gatherings of people, is looking for places where families gotten together, or people of his tribe have gotten together, the kibar, the important ones from amongst the tribe are together in one place, and he's seeking that place to openly call. This doesn't necessitate that Muslims, so give me 1 second, someone just wants to join. This doesn't necessitate that the Muslims themselves, those who had hidden their Islam, it doesn't necessitate that their Islam is now public. Rather, their Islam, their practicing of their religion was still what? Was still private. Why was it private? Because the reason it was private is because they still had a harm that they could fear. There was still harm to be feared, and so their Islam didn't become public at this stage. Is everyone with me? What became public is the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, his call. They're with me. So it doesn't necessitate that individuals who accepted Islam, it was now on a public platform, as will come when we talk about the harms that were endured by the early Muslims, etc. to come, inshallah. Type, if we understand the concept of the public da'wah and the transition from private, secretive to open and open propagation, we want to take some benefits from the call that the Prophet ﷺ gave. He's now following and calling people to Islam openly. The first benefit, and this is a very nice and important benefit, and it's connected to the fundamental cause of the religion, the foundations of the religion, and that's that. If we understand that the secretive da'wah, which we talked about 2 lessons ago now, and likewise lesson before that, and lasted for 3 years. That lasted for 3 years, a private call. We said the correct opinion is that roughly 3 years that lasted for. And now we've moved on to what? A public and open propagation of Islam. Both the private, secretive, and the public, open propagation, both of those calls focused on what? They both called to what? All of the focus was on what? Tying people's hearts to Allah. Tying the hearts of people to their Lord. Fine? Connecting them to Allah Azza wa Jal. In order that the people's hearts were not connected to anything else. That was the main focus of the call. That was the recurring belief system that's mentioned, that we find in the Quran, that we find in the Sunnah. Right? The belief system that أَلَّا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. The belief system that no soul is gonna share the burden of another soul. That the belief that one person can't benefit another person when it comes to the time that their actions are weighed, that their actions are placed on the scale. And that's why when we came to the call of the Prophet, we said what? The Prophet said, لَا أُغْنِي عَنْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. He said, I can't enrich you in any way, I can't benefit you in any way when it comes to the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal. The belief system that an individual can't benefit his tribe now, or his tribe can't benefit him, his society, those around him, his community, when it comes to the rights of Allah, find his family, those closest to him. And we're going to take that in even more detail when we talk about the death of Abu Talib. Fine, that a person's family, a person's tribe, a person's clan, a person's mansab, his status, fine, the place where he's at in life, that's not going to necessarily benefit him when it comes to the rights of Allah. And so this is the what? This is the nurturing, this is the cultivation. All of it is with regards to what we call pointing people towards the Tawheed of Allah. The Tawheed of Allah. And for those of you who were with us in our Aqidah lessons, you know what we mean when we say Tawheed, because we described this in detail when we talked about the issue of singling out, the issue of making one. It comes from the Arabic word wahadi wahidu, Tawheed, to make one. So things are a group, to single out. And we talked about Tawheed in detail. And so this is the focus of the da'wah, and the proof of that, it comes at the very beginning of the open propagation to Islam, and likewise with the secretive da'wah. Fine? To single Allah out in regard to His worship. That nothing else is worship except Allah Azza wa Jal. So the proof of this is how? The proof of this, and this is clear, bayn jali, there's no obscurity in regard to this being the foundation of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ when you look at the Seerah. Because when we look at the verses that descended, that initiated the open propagation, the secret of propagation, what were the verses? قُمْ فَأَنزِرْ, stand and propagate, stand and call. وَأَنزِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, warn those who are close to you from your close kindred, etc. فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. فَاصْدَعْ, go forth with that which you have been ordered. Fine, these are 3 verses. How do we understand the application of these 3 verses? In what we're about to, in the call that was done on the Mount of Safa, and that which is to come from the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ and the way he called. So that's now an explanation of, a clarification of the 3 verses. Fine? These verses teach us that what's going to come in clarification of them is the they call it al-qadiyya al-kubra, the main affair. Fine? The main focus. Right? And when you look throughout the Quran and Sunnah, as we said, you see this. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla said that we haven't sent before you from a messenger except that we inspired him, except that we revealed to him what? أنه لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدون, that Allah Azza wa Jalla said, except that we revealed to him that there's no deity worthy of worship in truth except Allah. فاعبدون, so worship him. وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا نَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُ الطَّاغُوتِ. And we dispatched and we sent forth to every nation a messenger. أن اعبدوا الله واجتنبوا الطاغوت, that they worship Allah alone and they avoid those that are worshipped beside him. وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. The two verses, وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين, Surah Al-Bayyinah, and that they weren't ordered except to worship Allah alone, مخلصين, sincerely له الدين, the religion sincerely for him, حنفاء, fine, those who avoid, those who tread the path of singling Allah out of Tawheed and turn away from the paths of shirk, of polytheism. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, and I haven't created mankind or jinn kind except what? Except to worship me alone. In the tafsir of the verse it comes what? لِيَعْبُدُونَ يُوَحِّدُونَ. In the tafsir of this verse comes what? يَعْبُدُونَ means يُوَحِّدُونَ, means that they come with Tawheed, means that they single Allah out in worship. And from the Sunnah you have the hadith of Mu'adh bin Jabal when he boarded or got on the riding beast with the Prophet ﷺ, and there was between them a small amount. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ turned to him and he said what? He said, Ya Mu'adh bin Jabal. And so Mu'adh bin Jabal said what? Labbayka Rasulullahi wa sa'adayk. I said, I'm at your service. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't say anything. And so they carried on. And after a while, the Prophet ﷺ said the same thing. He said, Ya Mu'adh. And Mu'adh said what? Labbayka Rasulullah wa sa'adayk. I'm at your service. What's up? The Prophet ﷺ didn't say anything. Carried on more. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Mu'adh. And Mu'adh said once again, Labbayka Rasulullah wa sa'adayk. This was the nature of the companions, that they were ready to what? To serve the Prophet, to obey commands. And so the Prophet ﷺ asked him, he said, Hal tadri ma haqqullahi ala ibadi? Do you know what the right of Allah is upon his slaves? And so the nature of the companions, they want to learn, they want more. So he said, what? Allah wa Rasuluhu a'lam. Allah and his messenger know best. Fine? And the Prophet ﷺ said, what? Haqqullahi ala ibadihi an ya'buduhu wa la yushriku bihi shay'a. He said that the right of Allah Azza wa Jal upon his slaves is right, and this is exactly in line with the verse that we just took. The right of Allah upon his slaves is that they worship him and they don't associate any partners with him in worship. To the end of the hadith. To the end of the hadith. Fine? Likewise in the hadith of Ibn Abbas, when the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when he sent him to Yemen, he dispatched him to Yemen to give da'wah to the people of Ahlul Kitab. And what did he say to him? What was the advice that he gave him? The advice that we gave was إِنَّكَ تَقْدُمُ عَلَى قَوْمٍ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ فَلْيَكُنْ أَوْلَ مَا تَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَيْهِ أَن يُوَحِّدَ اللَّهِ. Or in another narration it comes أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. The Prophet when he sent him, he said what? He sent him, and the first advice he gave him was that when you go to the people of the book, call them to what? Call them to worship Allah alone. Call them to worship Allah alone. And if they obey, to the rest of the hadith, if they obey, then teach them about what? The prayer that Allah made obligatory upon them. 5 prayers in the day and the night, to the end of the hadith. So number one, we understand from this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ started with the most important, because naturally when you give someone advice, you start with the most important. So he started with what? أَيُوَحِدَ اللَّهِ, that they worship Allah alone. And then he said, if they accept, then what? Then teach them about the prayer, and then teach them about the fasting and zakah to the end. Is everyone with me? يا ابن آدم إنك لو أتيتني بقراب الأرض ثم لقيتني لا تشرك بي شيئا لأتيتك بقرابها مغفرة. There's a hadith in Tirmidhi that says where the Prophet ﷺ, hadith Qudsi, says that Allah Azza wa Jal has said, O Bani Adam, if you come to me, if you meet me, it's a long hadith towards the end of the hadith, if you meet me with sins, with mistakes, with slip-ups, with errors, which we all have, that fill the span of the earth span in mistakes and errors and slip-ups. Fine? And then you meet me having not worshipped anyone else except me, then I'll come to you with the same span, forgiveness. I'll come to you with the same amount, forgiveness. Fine? And so we have to understand that the issue of Tawheed has to be the core foundation of a person's belief, in which everything else branches off from it. in which everything else branches off from it. And that's why when you study Islam from the very basics upwards, you take that Islam in the hadith of Jibreel is what? And we took this in our Aqidah course, that Islam is what? It's 3 stages from your Islam to, and then the Prophet was asked about Iman and then Ihsan. The first thing was Islam that was started with, and the first spring from those pillars of Islam was what? The Shahada, and the first part of the Shahada is what? Shahadu an la ilaha illallah. Is everyone with me? And that's why some of the Salaf, they would say what? They would say what? Who can feel safe of tribulation? Who can feel safe after Ibrahim? Who can feel safe after Ibrahim? وَمَنْ يَأْمَنْ بَلَا بَعْدَ Ibrahim. Who feels safe after Ibrahim? Meaning that Ibrahim alayhi salam, which we know was the head of the prophets, Ibrahim alayhi salam, especially when it comes to the issue of Tawheed. Ibrahim alayhi salam, what did he say in the Quran? What's the dua that he made? رَبَّنَا اجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. Ibrahim made specific dua. He's a prophet of Allah. Rather, he's from the head of the prophets. He's making a specific dua to Allah Azza wa Jal to say what? From the specific du'as that Ibrahim made in the Quran. From them was, O Lord, protect me and my offspring, fine, from worshipping idols. Protect me from falling into the opposite of the core of the religion. Protect me from the opposite of La ilaha illallah. Fine? So that's why some of the Salaf would say, if Ibrahim is making this dua, it means Ibrahim is fearful of falling into that mistake. So that's why he would say what? Who after Ibrahim can feel safe? If Ibrahim didn't. Is everyone with me? So this is an extremely important affair, and we'll clarify its importance as well in the course on Aqidah. Like it's the importance, the level of the importance is what is that high that it should be repeated often, and a person should go back to it and this core principle and core foundation is not just Tawheed, the branches of Aqidah in general, the branches of a person's faith in general and beliefs. They should be what? They should be studied continuously. They should be studied continuously. That's the first benefit, and that's the core message of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is what we can understand from it. The second benefit we want to extract from the public and open propagation of Islam is that when the Prophet ﷺ, he began with what? He began with those close to him. He began with those close to him, right? Because when we took the narration, we said what? He began with this tribe and then that tribe and that tribe. He began with, and even the verse says it, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, and warn those who are your close kindred. Fine? So the Prophet ﷺ is sent to the entire rahmatan lil alameen. He sent as a mercy to mankind. He sent to the entire ummah. Is everyone with me? That being said, who did he start his da'wah with? Al-Aqrabeen, those close to him. Those close to him. And so what the Prophet ﷺ clarified here, extremely, extremely important. Fine? He clarified the levels, the stages of what? Of responsibility. That there's some things which are awjab, there's some things which are more obligatory upon a person before they go to other affairs. Even though they both have virtue in them, they both might even be obligatory. However, there's things that come first. Not everything is of the same level. The Prophet ﷺ here, when he gave this call, he clarified to us who we start with, who a person starts giving nasiha to, who's more deserving of a person's advice, of a person's good word, of a person's da'wah. Is everyone with me? Just like when we just mentioned regarding Tawheed, the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'az to Yemen, and he sent him to teach the people of Ahlul Kitab and call them to Islam. What we took from that hadith is that he started with the most important, and then the next important, and the next important, and he started with Tawheed. Just like we extracted the importance of Tawheed from Mu'az's, what was said to Mu'az when he went to Yemen, likewise from the fact that the Prophet ﷺ started with those close to him here, we likewise extract that he started with the most important. That he started with the most important with regard to him at that time. Fine? And so you put forth those close to you and then those thereafter. So that the person, that those who are most deserving or is more, have more right over you for these things such as da'wah and advice and ordering with good and forbidding evil, first and foremost, they're your family. First and foremost, they're your family, those close to you. A person has a wife, a wife's husband, fine, the children. They're the most, and that's after yourself, of course. They are the most important. Fine? Because of course our own souls need da'wah as well. They need advice. They need ordering good and forbidden with evil. Fine? In nafs amaratum bisu. Then after that are your relatives. After that are what? Are your relatives, those further out. Fine, just as the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاءٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ, that all of you are shepherds to a flock. Fine, whether it be a man who's a shepherd to his family or a woman who has likewise that responsibility in regard to a household. That's why they call her in Arabic countries, call her Rabbat Manzil, that she's the leader of the house, or the queen of the house if you like. Fine, the Prophet says, all of you are shepherds to a flock, and all of you will be asked and questioned about your flock. What did you give them? What did you teach them? What did you advise them with? What did you order them with? What did you call them towards? What did you teach them is good and what did you teach them is bad? Fine? And so a person is asked about what he did in regards to his wife, in regard to his family, in regard to his kids, in regard to his close kindred, his relatives. Fine? So just as we said, and we repeat that the verses that are mentioned, we mentioned this in many benefits before, that the verses come down which said to the Prophet وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. This verse is not specific, it's specific to the Prophet, and likewise it's general, and likewise it's general as a guidance for us, as an order to us. Fine? So it's not solely for the Prophet ﷺ, rather it's for the entire ummah, this command. Allah is commanding the entire ummah to warn those close to them, warn their close kindred. Is everyone with me? يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. Fine? Sadly we find that an individual might have extreme energy, he's energetic. Fine? He doesn't become lazy when it comes to speaking and advising, teaching, whatever it might be, other people outside his family. And when it comes to his own family, when it comes to those close to him, he's what? He becomes lazy. He becomes lethargic. Fine? This issue here of a person whose behavior is like this, then what this person has done is he's jumped the levels that the Prophet clarified to us that start with those close to you and then go further out. This person has jumped from here past. Fine? Imagine you build a house. Imagine you build a house now. And common sense tells you when you build a house, you start with certain things and you end with certain things. This person, the likelihood of this person is like the person who's bought his curtains and his chandelier and whatever it might be, and the decorations before he's even got a foundation, before he's got walls on the door. Fine? The way you practice religion and da'wah is from that. Advising is from that. Spreading the messages from that, teaching is from that, and ordering good and forbidding evil is from that. That's all worship. Worship has to be done. What has to be done in a manner which we were taught. Fine, and the Prophet is clarifying to us in regard to how to convey the correct methodology, the best methodology. And so it's important that every one of us as individuals ask ourselves now. Every one of us has shortcomings when it comes to this department, without a shadow of a doubt. Especially in our time where often as a basis the family unit is under war. Fine? It's under fire. Fine? So every one of us needs to ask ourselves, everyone who's gonna leave this world, everyone who's gonna meet Allah Azza wa Jal, fine? Everyone who has some form of qawama, some form of responsibility, fine, some form of sulta, of power over someone else, or responsibility over someone else. Each of those people, each of us needs to ask ourselves, anyone who has relatives, anyone who has a wife, anyone who has children, they need to ask themselves, and we need to ask ourselves, what have we put forward for our families? What have we put forward in regard to this for our children, for our close ones, for our loved ones? Fine? Have we ordered them with obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal? Have we forbade them from sins and transgression? The verse that we just mentioned is clear. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. That's the basis of your da'wah to your family. Oh, you who believe, qu, protect yourselves and your family. Protect yourselves and your family, nara, from the fire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةِ. The fire of which, the fuel of which is what? Is mankind and stones. Fine? That verse should be at the forefront of someone's mind when they think about their family and what they've put forward for their family or their close ones. Fine? And from the nice things that the author has mentioned here in regard to this issue of beginning with our families and those close to us, is that he mentioned that the verse that we're focused on here is وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, is warn those, fine, warn those who are close to you, your close kindred. Fine? A nice benefit that the author of the book Fiqh Seerah mentioned in regard to this is that this order came down. This order came down وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, and this set of verses was closed off with a specific statement. It was closed off with the verse وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْعَزِيزِ الرَّحِيمِ. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْعَزِيزِ الرَّحِيمِ. Fine? The closing verse of this set of verses, after it says warn those close to you, Allah Azza wa Jal says what? And have trust, have tawakkul and reliance upon Aziz Rahim, upon Allah, the most great, the most powerful, the most merciful. Why? He said one of the beauties and wisdoms behind this, a nice point with regard to this, is that when a person now, when he obeys the first verse, which says وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, when he obeys the first verse and he warns those close to him and he gives the advice and he orders with good and he forbids from evil, fine, a person is very possible, very likely, and this is known from brothers and sisters that have contacted us, that we know that a person can find enmity. Na'am, bila shak, a person can find enmity from those even close to him. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ found enmity from those close to him, and we took this from this event last lesson. And we said that Abu Lahab's statement in response to the Prophet ﷺ da'wah was extremely intense. It was a big blow to the Prophet ﷺ that someone who's close to him, initially close to him, not someone far away, fine, someone close to him, the very first speech or first open call, open propagation, what is he met with? He's the person who says what? Tubban laka sa'ir al-yawm, almost as if he's saying curse upon you. Fine? So that's a proof that you can find enmity from those close to you. Fine? So a person, when he obeys the first verse, he might find a level of what? A level of harm, whether it be verbal, whether it be physical, whatever it might be, fine, from those close to him, because of an advice that he gives, because of the fact that he says don't do this. Fine, this is from the people, this is an action from the evil actions. It's best that we try and avoid these actions. The fact that he orders towards good, he tells his family that they should pray, for example. Find the importance of the prayer, etc. Obviously with hikmah wal maw'izat al-hasana, with wisdom and good admonishment. However, that's for another. The way it's done is for another time. But the fact that they do this, they might what? They might find some form of the reaction might entail some form of harm. So Allah tells us after this, after obeying this verse, just after, He says what? وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَيْهِ فِي هَذَا. He says trust and rely upon Allah after doing that, after obeying. When He says وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى عَزِيزِ الرَّحِيمِ, so after you obey the first verse and you warn those close to you, then trust in Allah, have reliance upon Allah with what comes after that. Is everyone with me? And it's important to understand when it comes to this issue of those close to us. I always advise that a person brings to their mind the story of Nuh with his son, the story of Nuh with their son. And that's not just for your family, that's for anyone, but specifically your family, because sometimes no matter how much da'wah, no matter how much you try, how patient you are, how much wisdom you use, it might be the case that some of our most those closest to us, those most beloved to us, fine, they still don't pray. Are you with me? They still fall into X, Y, Z, and they still don't do A, B, C. Is everyone with me? So the story of Nuh is very important. The fact that Nuh and the call that he gave to his son, fine, and the fact that his son, and bear in mind, Nuh is a prophet. He's not just a prophet. He was a prophet. He called for 950 years. ألف سنة إلا 50 عاما. 950 years he was calling his people, and after all of that, his own son still didn't what? Still didn't believe. Fine. Moving on to the following benefit. The following benefit is that when we look at the open propagation here of the Prophet ﷺ, there's a specific word. There's a specific word that's repeated. Fine. There's a specific phrase. Fine. Or terminology that comes in the verses here, in the verses that I mentioned in regard to this, and the specific hadith that I mentioned in regard to this. Fine. And that word in Arabic is the word Nazir or Inzar, and they both come from the same root word. Fine. Nazara. Nazir or Inzar, yani a warning. A warning. This word here, and the Prophet being a warner, fine, there is mentioned often in a hadith. He said, "Inni nadhir lakum bayna yaday azabin alim." The Prophet said that I'm a warner to after. He said, if I tell you that there's an army behind this mountain, would you believe me? And he said, "Ma jarabna alayka, ma jarabna minka illa sidqa." That we haven't experienced from you except truthfulness. So the Prophet then said, "What? Inni lakum bayna inni nadhir lakum bayna yaday azabin alim." That verily I'm a messenger, I'm a warner sent to you, fine, to warn you of a punishment within our midst. Fine. This phrase here, nazir, nazara, inzar, the idea of warning is often repeated in regard to the Prophet's da'wah. So that it's very important that a person now, when he conveys the message of Islam, when he reminds the people, he reminds them, and he brings to mind this reality, that what he's doing when he reminds the people is a warning. Fine, it is a warning, a severe warning from what? It is a severe warning from punishment. Fine, it is a severe warning and an alarm bell from the intensity of the hisab, of the accounting that's going to take place when a person is resurrected, when a person stands before Allah Azza wa Jal. Is everyone with me? Rather, in some of the narrations in regard to the actual call of the Prophet ﷺ on Safa, in some of the wordings of the hadith, it said that the Prophet ﷺ said that I'm a warner to you. An example of me, the example of me and you, is the example of a person who sees the enemy, and he goes to his family. He goes to his family, and he fears that the enemy is going to get to his family first. That the enemy is going to get to his family before he gets back. And so what does he do? He shouts. He calls out. Fine. And in the hadith itself, it said that the Prophet ﷺ actually called out the same call. Ya sabaha. And it's like an Arabic phrase that they would use when they're calling out to people. Fine. It said that he actually used the same call, and he called out loudly. Fine. So that's the example that the Prophet ﷺ gave us. So it was important to bring this to mind, especially compounded with what we just talked about with regard to all of us being a shepherd over a flock, and all of us being asked about set responsibilities. Type the following benefit. Moving on, there's a very nice benefit here, which is something miraculous in nature. An evidence for the truthfulness of al-Islam, something which can build upon a person's certainty when they understand it. And that's in regard to the surah. And a lot of us probably heard this example, and it's a very powerful example. The example of the surah that was revealed during this open call, when the Prophet did this open propagation on the Mount of Safa, the surah that was revealed in response to Abu Lahab. The surah was Tabbat yada abi lahab wa tab, to the end. Is everyone with me? Type how. For those of us who aren't aware, how? What's my point here? My point here is that Abu Lahab is alive. Abu Lahab is alive now when these verses came down. The verses that were revealed. So Abu Lahab, when the Prophet gave the call and said that I'm a warner sent to you, Abu Lahab said, Tubban laka sa'ir al-yawm. Abu Lahab said that intense statement, that intense rebuttal, where he said, as if he's saying, curse be upon you. Did you bring us out of our houses for this? And in response to this, the verses were revealed. The Prophet's response was what? Was the verses. The verses of Tabat yada abi lahab wa tab, ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab, sayasla naran dhata lahab. The verses coming down, ruling upon, the Quran has ruled upon Abu Lahab in this scenario, a definite ruling. There's no doubt. It's clear. A clear ruling that he's not going to come to Muhammad ﷺ, he's not going to come to the Prophet and say that he believes. It's ruled upon him with definitively that he's going to die as a disbeliever. Is everyone with me? Even though this was the beginning of the call, how many of the people thereafter who were the furthest away from Islam, who had enmity to Islam, who fought the Prophet ﷺ, they came to the Prophet themselves thereafter and they said, I believe. They took the Shahada. Rather, they became from that Islam was good. It wasn't just that they believed, no, they became beneficial to al-Islam. How many people? So in the very first stage, the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jalla has ruled upon Abu Lahab, who's still alive, still hasn't passed away yet, fine, that he's not going to do this like a lot and many other people did. Abu Sufyan, for example. Fine, so many of the people who you would never think that they would enter Islam, entered into Islam. Umar ibn Khattab. They used to say about Umar Khattab, they used to say that if the donkey of Fulan is going to become Muslim before Umar ibn Khattab becomes Muslim. That's what they used to say. And what happened? And Umar became Muslim as an expression of how far away he was from al-Islam. So many people far away became Muslim. So here, this is now the miraculous nature of the sending of this surah in this specific scenario now. Fine? The Quran has not gave this ruling to anyone, even those who are more severe. Fine? No, none of them. Fine? So what's important to note here is that even for the sake of the Prophet ﷺ's da'wah is not something that is like to Abu Lahab. It's something that he's now striving. Fine? Blood was spilt in order to try and stop this call from spreading. Fine? So even from the point of, or from the angle of a false statement, a lie, fine, of just for the sake of dismissing this call and getting rid of the da'wah of Islam, Abu Lahab could have come to the Prophet after this verse and said, the Quran rules upon me definitively that I'm going to die as a non-Muslim, right? And he could literally say, what? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I take my shahada. Fine? There was munafiqun present throughout Islam. There was hypocrites present throughout Islam. People who didn't actually believe. They just openly displayed Islam for whatever gains it was. Fine? So the Abu Lahab could have easily done the same. And the second that he says that he's what? Khalas, the Quran says that I'm definitely not going to become Muslim. I became Muslim. Does everyone understand this point? So even this could have happened, but it didn't happen. Fine? So the question here is, how did the Prophet ﷺ know? How did he know? This is at the beginning of the da'wah. Abu Lahab didn't just die the next day. He died a long time after battles pursued and back and forth and tit for tat. Is everyone with me? After the Islam spread and got stronger, etc. Fine? So how did the Prophet ﷺ, who informed him that Abu Lahab was going to die as a disbeliever? Is everyone with me? Fine? Likewise we mentioned in regard to the verses, it was said that from the verses that descended in regard to the ordering the Prophet ﷺ to go forth and spread and give his da'wah openly, was the verse فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, that go forth with that which you have been ordered. Fine? And turn away from the disbelievers. There's now another benefit. If we look to the first word of the verse, Allah Azza wa Jalla said فَاصْدَعْ. Fine? And this word comes from the root word صَدَعَ. Very quickly we'll go through it because it's kind of linked to the language. This verse here that's used, fine, is linked to something being firm, something being solid. They would use it in regard to describing there's root words. It was the root word of words that would be used for describing the firmness of a mountain, the firmness and stability of a wall. Fine, and so this teaches us that this is the word used to command the Prophet to go and give his open propagation. So this gives us the benefit that a person has to be what? He has to be firm and stay strong and stay firm in regard to that propagation of the message that Allah Azza wa Jalla has ordered the Prophet ﷺ with firmness. Fine? With not being shy, with not wavering when he goes forth and he's facing the kuffar and he's facing the disbelievers. And he's putting forth to them what? The risala, the message of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Fine? And so this is the stance of a Muslim, the stance of a mu'min, that when he calls to Allah Azza wa Jal, and when he clarifies the religion, when he clarifies his beliefs, when he clarifies those signposts of Islam, those elements of Islam that are so apparent, so open, fine, salah, the Eid prayers, these type of things, al-Jumu'ah, his beliefs, the 6 pillars of faith, when a Muslim clarifies these things, he does so with confidence. He does so with confidence in that which he says. And this is for every Muslim now, that he's not shy. He doesn't waver. He doesn't feel as if he's on a weak leg. Right? A Muslim who says the shahada, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, and he believes in that statement, that testimony. It's a testimony. He testifies towards that, and he has belief in that statement. Fine? He has confidence in speaking about that said testimony, what it entails, the beliefs that it entails, the actions that it entails. Is everyone with me? Sadly, you find the reason this benefit is important is because sadly you find, specifically in you could argue in our environment, fine, in the Western world, where we're surrounded by so many things that influence an individual, fine, and we're all aware of the environment that we live in, fine, especially in regard to the teenage years, for example, the youth, fine, school, college, fine, work colleagues and things like this, fine. We find that especially the youth in those type of age groups, they have very little confidence in their religion. They have very, very little confidence in their religion. It's rare to find someone who's not shy to speak about his religion. Fine. For you find, subhanallah, a person might even be shy to just mention Allah, to just mention the word Allah, to mention the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to mention the Prophet of Allah Azza wa Jal, to the end of it. Fine. Rather, you might even find that a person, what? He sugarcoats so often. Fine. And sadly, you find du'at, you find people that are supposed to be at the forefront, giving the message to normal. You find them sugarcoat, so it's not necessarily a surprise that you find youth that are far away from that field that sugarcoat. Fine. They try and what? They try and bring the message of Islam closer to them, to the point that it becomes what? They're now coming down from that which is their foundations. They're now compromising. Fine. They now try and bring it so close to them that they compromise on foundations of the religion. Fine. And as I said, you find this even with people that are supposed to go forth and give da'wah openly, people that are known to win social media and other than that. You find this type of compromise being made. Fine. And we call this a compromise that what? A damaging compromise, a compromise that damages. Fine. Rather Ibn al-Qayyim, and we'll end with this due to lack of time. Ibn al-Qayyim sections people out into four groups. The first of those groups is the person who finds his comfort. Fine. He finds his you could call it comfort with Allah, with his religion, with his faith. He finds that in private and when he's with the people. When he's in private, he has that confidence. He has that contentment. And likewise, even if he's in front of a group of people, if he's in public, he has the same contentment. He has the same connection with Allah. Is everyone with me? The same contentment with his religion. Ibn Qayyim said this is the first group of people, the first group of four, and this is al-muhib as-sadiq. This is the one who loves Allah truthfully. He has a truthful love of Allah. And then he says the second group is the one who finds his contentment with Allah and his religion and his faith when he's in public only. When he's in public. But yet when he goes private, when he goes into his privacy, he doesn't find the same contentment. Ibn Qayyim said this person has an illness. This person has an illness in his heart. The third group of people is the one who what? You can see the kind of stages we're going through. The third group of people is what? The one who finds that contentment with his religion and other than that. When he's in private, and not when he's in front of the people, and when he's in private, as well as however not in front of the people, not in front of the people. not in front of the people. Ibn al-Qayyim says that this person here who has that contentment, but he loses it when he's in front of the people, Ibn al-Qayyim describes this person as he's sadiq, he's truthful. He's truthful in his belief and his faith. However, he's da'if, he's weak. He's weak. Fine, and obviously this weakness has reasons, fine, and elements that caused such weakness. Is everyone with me? Fine. Whether it be the strength of his understanding, the clarity of his understanding in regard to the foundations of Islam, fine, or the weakness of said understanding, fine, the feebleness of, it might even be feeble, a person's understanding of the foundations of Islam, fine, or likewise it might be not, either it's connected to the strength or weakness of his understanding of the foundations of Islam, or on the opposite end, the strength or weakness of his understanding of other religions and other belief systems. A person doesn't understand how weak, because naturally when a person understands how weak the other belief systems and ways of life are, then it increases their contentment and certainty with regard to al-Islam. Fine. And Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned the fourth category of people, which inshallah we'll take next week due to shortness of time, as I believe the link's gonna end. Is there any questions up to here? Inshallah we'll leave it here due to the shortness of time. We have just a few more benefits inshallah to take with regard to this, and we're going to move on to the next event. We're going to move on to the next event where we're going to talk about, we're slowly building up to where we're getting very close to the hijrah. We're getting very close, because now the open call has started. What's going to happen is we're going to talk about the reaction of the non-Muslims, of the disbelievers, of the polytheists to the da'wah now, because now it's become open in their face. Now their false deities are being criticized. So we're going to now talk about their response to said da'wah, and that's going to lead us on to what? The persecution that built up in regard towards the Muslims, and then the hijrah. And then the hijrah, when we say the hijrah, we don't mean the main hijrah. We don't mean the main hijrah yet. We mean the first hijrah to Al-Habasha, the first hijrah to what is known as, you could say, Ethiopia now, to escape the persecution. Fine. And thereafter, the coming events will be the big hijrah, inshallah. We'll leave it there. No one has any questions. Sorry. Inshallah, we'll leave it there. If there is any questions, just send me a message and I'll try my best to respond. Jazakumullah khaira. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.